And I was very curious about the world that you've really become an expert in, which is wholesale innovation, creative finance. And a lot of agents, they've had the experience of reading something weird or talking to someone on the phone, and some other agent just kind of brushes off everyone under one blanket, one umbrella. But the truth is, you can actually help agents and their clients and their customers in a lot of ways. So I was kind of wondering, what's a couple different ways that you've maybe stepped in the past, or that you can help an active agent who's helping residential buyers and sellers?
Yeah, so most recently, we did a couple deals with probate estates where they have been working with the seller. One of them was out of state. This gentleman was out of state. His father passed away. The house was in rough condition, needed a little bit of repair. He could have listed the property with the agent, but he was really looking for a quicker solution. He just wanted to be able to come up, take some stuff out of the house, and, quickly close on it, get the cash out, and move on. He didn't want to have to deal with cleaning the house up, doing showings, making it presentable, working with an agent, paying fees, commissions. But the agent had seen me at a grid event, knew what I did. She reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have this seller. He's really looking for a cash buyer, cash offer, quick sale. It's a probate. There's some stuff going on with the estate. I'm not really sure." So, of course, I deal with probate all the time. I knew the right people to talk to. We've got a good probate attorney. We were able to move quickly to, find a solution, get them paid. I think we closed in like 2 weeks. And so, that's one example of an agent just bringing me an opportunity. She still got paid a full commission, 3%. So she was happy. The seller was happy. We got a good deal out of it. Other examples, we have a seller in pre-foreclosure. Agent brings me the opportunity. There's a short timeline. Trying to get the property ready, marketed, and find a buyer in 3 weeks wasn't really realistic. So we came in, made a cash offer, presented that signed purchase agreement to the bank. Bank was able to postpone the foreclosure, bought us a little bit of extra time, get it to closing. And again, it was really a speed issue with the timeline of the foreclosure. So those situations where speed is important, speed is a factor, are always good opportunities for us to come in and provide a solution.
So I think, in the last couple of years, especially, agents have gone through a lot of different new training, right? How to interact with consumers, contract changes, a lot of stuff kind of falling from the lawsuit. But even prior to that, there's a whole specialty in probate, a whole specialty in pre-foreclosure, because these are different legal processes that agents don't really get trained on. There's no CE class on, how to handle a motivated seller who wants to do, that's the nature of CE. So I guess tapping into you have those connections, that understanding of these different processes. And oftentimes what ends up happening is you have that quick cash offer. That's exactly what the seller wants. They're stressed out. They're going to their agent, and the agent typically only has a toolkit of, hey, we can put the lockbox on it and hopefully someone's financing doesn't fall through. We can price it appropriately. But then that seller still has all that stress and uncertainty when they're really a lot of times just trying to get out of a tough situation, especially when it comes to stuff like probate, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, we have, situations where you've got probate and you've got a property that's in distress. So you've got to deal with inspections, you've got to deal with financing, as you mentioned. And those are just hurdles that we're able to jump over pretty easily. So in addition to those quick cash situations, we've got a situation where a deal we did at the end of last year, agent brought me an opportunity. They had the property listed for several months, didn't sell. This was a house that the seller had bought just a couple years ago, but she was getting behind on payments. She needed to sell the house. It was getting ready to go into pre-foreclosure. They couldn't find a buyer because they had the property listed at a price that she needed to get out of it. She didn't have any money to bring to the closing table to close. So she's underwater, essentially. She needed to sell it for whatever it was, $300,000, $350,000. And she couldn't find they were getting some offers, but they weren't high enough to get her out of the situation. So we used creative finance, subject to take over a good loan to whatever it was, 2.5%, 3% interest rate loan, get her out of the situation. She didn't care about making money. She just needed to get out of it. She didn't want to lose any more money.
Right.
Again, short timeline. She was trying to get out of the country, essentially, go back home to her, family out of the country. And she just needed to get out of it. And she's stuck because she can't sell the house for enough money. So we came in, bought it sub 2. I actually wholesaled it sub 2. So I put it under contract as a sub 2, found another investor that wanted to buy it as a rental property, wholesaled it to her, made a couple bucks, stayed free.
See, that is like next level.
Yeah.
That is next level. I think that probably happens a decent bit. You specialize in this, so you might see it more often. Like, people are going on the market, then they kind of miscalculate or don't realize, or maybe life happens, and those holding costs really start to put a lot of pressure on folks.
Yep.
But to your point, that's an incredible deal. So you did a wholesale sub 2. So you had a sub 2 contract where they had a low rate and they wanted to get out of that situation. So you did that, and then you found, was that before you closed out on the front end?
Yeah. I just put it under contract as a sub 2 and then wholesale it. So I never put $1 into it. I just wholesaled it as a sub 2. So that end buyer closed on it as a sub 2, paid me really a finder's fee.
Sure.
Or I actually ended up just kind of connecting her with the buyer, and she paid me a finder's fee. So I didn't traditionally wholesale it, but I brought her a good opportunity at a good rate.
Sure.
A new construction home. Like, it was a brand new house.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do anything to it. She just bought it.
Perfect rental property.
We thought about hanging on to it ourselves. It was just kind of in a weird area outside of our market in Maryland, in like Eastern Shore, Maryland. So I just pushed it out to some sub 2 buyers that I know in that area, and she jumped on it.
So if an agent is in certain kinds of situations, when do you think it makes sense to reach out to you? Like, let's say, I know you haven't done too much traditional agenting in your career in real estate, but is there a certain situation that comes to mind where you might be of help to an agent who's maybe got a client that they're not really sure what to do with?
Yeah, I think any uncertainty about listing, even in like a potential short sale situation, we can a lot of times we can come up with solutions there. But yeah, I think any situation that you might walk into as an agent, and you just get the sense that either they're underwater, or the property is not going to show well, or their condition makes you think, maybe they would be better served without listing it. Obviously, like that would be a good time to reach out and connect with me, and I can get my eyes on it and kind of take a look at the numbers and say, hey, here are some alternative solutions to listing. And like I said, like from an agent's perspective, I think a lot of agents, of course, want to protect their commissions. Like, either we're going to pay for those leads. So regardless, would you rather, let a seller leave a seller hanging and just say, oh, I can't list this property because X, Y, or Z, it's not in good enough shape. I see a lot of agents that just look at a property and say, like, there's nothing I can do with this. Like, I don't want to list it. So they just let it go, or they say, maybe talk to another agent, or maybe call, some other investors or something, or look at this opportunity. But like, they're not getting anything in that situation. So it's like, why not monetize those leads? You're out there having those conversations, meeting with those sellers. Like, there's a great way to monetize that in those situations. We're going to either pay a commission, we're going to pay a referral fee, some way. We want to take care of people, like, just like we want to be taken care of. We're going to take care of the people that bring us good opportunities.
Sure.
I think to your original question, I think, even if there's a little bit of uncertainty about a situation, like, call me, and like, let's just talk about it and think about, like, hey, yes, there's the listing solution. That's a solution for me too. If I think somebody's best option to suit their needs is going to be a list of property, that's what I'm going to tell them straight up. Like, that's fine by me. I'll give a referral to an agent. And I have agents that I work with a lot because they take care of me. They take care of my clients when I need a listing, or I give them a referral, and then they bring me opportunities. So like, the more of those relationships I have in certain locations, or they bring me an opportunity, I'm going to pay them back, in the same way. So it becomes relational. as well. As we all know, this business is that, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I mean, even I've been in that situation where I kind of saw where the client was, what they're telling me, where their needs are. And, my toolkit was just, you should list the property. And, going back, this was one of my first deals, right? And going back to that time, there were a lot of moving parts that I wasn't ready for it, to be honest. And if I had someone like you in my network,
mhm.
if I had reached out and had a simple conversation, it'd be like, oh, well, we could do this. And if your seller wants that, we can also help with that. And then no problem, right? What ended up happening was I didn't have that solution. We kind of put the property on the market, very motivated, stressed seller.
Mhm.
And there was family living there, all kinds of stuff going on. And it ended up sitting for 2.5 months. Everyone was stressed out, like there were a ton of holding costs on this, but it ended up being a lot of strife that could have been avoided if someone was there and just right on the mark. And ultimately it worked out for them. But I think the time is really big, right? Especially people have a lot going on in their lives, and having that option of a quick sale. But a lot of times there's other things going on too. I mean, are there some other ways that you're able to provide value in a transaction that maybe a typical retail buyer can't?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do a lot for our clients for sure. Helping them with moving, helping them find, somewhere to go. I think a lot is a big barrier for a lot of people. It's like, well, I'm in this situation, but where am I going to go? I mean, there's only so much we can do to a point, but it's like we want to help people get them, not just buy their house and move on. Like we want to help them out of the situation into a better situation if we can. I mean, I have a deal right now where the seller's in pre-foreclosure. He's about to lose his house all the way up, a few days before the auction. We're able to stop the auction. We happen to have one of the properties that we own that's open, vacant. So I moved the guy into the house.
Wow.
I moved him into the house while we do a little bit of work to the house, clean it up, put it on the market, list it, and find a buyer for it. So we're doing an innovation. But he didn't have anywhere to go. He's got a couple kids, had nowhere to go. We had to get him. The house was kind of a mess. It needed some work. And so we put the property under contract. I moved him into our vacant property that didn't charge him any rent up front. He's going to pay us rent once the house sells for that time. But he didn't have any money. He didn't have anywhere to go. We moved him out, paid to move him out, took care of his rent for a couple months while we get the house cleaned up. We did the repairs, our dime. The house is on the market under contract right now. And once it closes, he'll get some money, we'll get some rent, and he'll be able to kind of move on from there. So, we always take those. I mean, I've gone into people's houses at times and help them sort through stuff and move stuff. Like when I was starting out, you know what I mean? Like I was doing everything. I was doing anything and everything for people that I could. Getting my hands dirty. I took a dog from somebody at one point.
Well,
Took this dog out of the house. Like this was a bad one. Nasty house, bad situation. In that same situation, I take this dog from him, get the dog cleaned up, found it a home. But in the same situation, I helped those sellers move, paid for their moving expenses, helped them get an apartment, put them up in an apartment for 6 months, prepaid rent for them. So we definitely go the extra mile, to help people out where, I think a lot of investors and agents, they may not take that extra step.
absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you did the work of a moving company.
Yeah. Repairs.
SPCA, maybe
dog
a little bit.
shelter.
That's a lot of service. Isn't that like the company? What do you call it? The tagline, the motto. Where does that come from?
Just
Sorry, what is it? And then where is it?
yeah, service over self equals freedom was kind of the mantra that I've been living by. Because when I was starting out, it was a tough transition. I did the agent thing for a while. My heart definitely wasn't there. I was much more interested in investing, but it was a start. It certainly opened up a lot of doors for me and got me to where I am today for sure. But, I had this like burning desire to just get a deal. And I was like, I just got to get a deal. I got to get a deal. And, I felt like I'm doing the thing, but I think that comes across to people when you're in these situations. Like you're so overly eager to for me, it was, I got to make some money. Like I've got 2 kids. I've been doing this thing for like a couple years now and jumping around and trying to figure it out. That comes across. And so when I started looking at it, it's like, I just need to help. Like, how can I help people? Like, how can I service people and put my needs aside, which is a hard thing to do because I'm hungry and I've got bills and I'm like struggling a little bit too. But if you switch, kind of reframe that and really put the clients first and servicing the client, all that other stuff starts to happen. That was a realization for me that really moved me forward quickly. It was like, just get out of this, like, pressed, like, I got to eat mind frame, and just put yourself into their shoes and think, like, how can I help these people? If you come from a place of service, then that becomes authentic and people start to really trust you. That's how you gain their trust. Like, be authentic, come from a place of service. How can I help you? Understand their situation, figure out the best solution, instead of, I got to get a deal done. I got to make some money. Like, I want to do a sub 2 deal or whatever. That, like, everybody has a different, thought in their brain. Like, they lock in on things, whether it's financial reward or a certain type of deal that they want to do. Everybody sees creative finance and they're like, oh, I want to do a sub 2 deal. How do I find a sub 2 deal? Well, you don't just find sub 2 deals. You got to go out and, like, talk to people and talk to sellers and figure out their problem. And then those situations start popping up. Those opportunities for sub 2 start popping up when you're just out there trying to service people. And so that's kind of where it came from. And it's really kind of become, like I said, my mantra. Like, now it's like, it's just all about service. Like, how can we help? What is the situation? What's the problem? How can I help? And then everything else after that happens.
Sure.
Unlock, financial reward, and really, like, a spiritual, like, reward. That has been the most rewarding thing for me, is like, when you're able to help somebody out of one of these situations, like, the amount of gratitude that they have for you. And that is really the most rewarding thing in all of it.
Reminds me, somebody said that it reminds you like a Mark Twain quote. I think it was Mark Twain. I might be wrong on this. If the only tool you have is a hammer, then all your problems look like nails.
Yeah.
Right. So I can see that, right? People kind of see, like, oh, I can do a sub 2, but getting to talk to you, I've heard like it's that problem solving attitude.
Yeah.
Not, I just want to use this hammer.
Yeah.
Just use the hammer for the sake of using the hammer. Sometimes you need the screwdriver. Sometimes you need the hammer and the screwdriver. Sometimes you need some outside thing. So when I hear you talk about the creative ways of really structuring a deal, but really what is it, solving a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's that value you're creating outside of financials, which I think not everybody is equipped to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you really have to have, like, a big heart to go into a lot of these situations, and just love that though. Love that. It's truly client first.
Yeah.
And when you think of it from that perspective, you start to see different ways of solving the problem, different angles, whatever you want to call it. But it also requires a lot of knowledge. And I'm curious, like, where have you accumulated all this knowledge? You must have invested in yourself. Have you, I'm pretty sure they don't teach this stuff in real estate school.
Yeah. I mean, I spent, like I said, I think I said initially, like, the first probably 2 or 3 years of my real estate journey just failing and paying a lot of money and trying to figure things out, and joined a lot of different mentorships and group coachings. And I would just find things that were interesting to me. I mean, initially it was just, I want to be in real estate. I don't know what that looks like. So I got licensed, joined a team, played around in that space for about a year. And then, retail wasn't it. I knew that really from the get-go, but I wanted to get my foot in the door and meet some people. And like I said, that was ultimately, the basis of my partnership and a lot of relationships that I have now. But I stepped away from retail, and then my entrepreneurial spirit took over, and tried to, do a couple things on my own, and, like, I have this idea, I have that idea. And then what the spark was creative finance and sub 2, and Pace Morby, joined the Pace Morby community, joined the sub 2 community. And that was really the light bulb for me. It was a big, for me at the time, a big investment, money that I didn't really have, frankly. I was all like just putting it on a credit card and, like, taking a leap of faith and knowing that, like, hey, if I can just get, like, a deal done, like, it'll take care of itself. But it took a while. There's a lot of information in that community. There's a lot of information out there now about creative finance. It becomes very overwhelming. And it really wasn't until I just started I just said, like, there's nothing else I can learn at this point. Like, I just gotta, and so that's when the real learning started, just picking up the phone, making phone calls, talking to sellers, identifying like potential situations that could work, and then just getting myself in the way of deals, and like, reaching out to people that I knew that were doing it, and just learning by doing was ultimately my best way to learn. I mean, I'd never done a sub two deal. I'd never done a novation. I'd never done, some of these other creative finance tactics. And like, you learn what to look for, and then, you just do it. And like, I've always been like very solo, like I can do everything by myself. Like I can figure it out. I wish I hadn't done as much of that getting going, because I think it slowed me down a lot more than anything. But, I learned a lot. But I would recommend people that are just interested in creative finance or interested in doing deals, like find somebody that's doing it, partner with them, join them, and learn with somebody. You're gonna avoid a lot of potential, mistakes. And I lost, not only was I paying a lot of money to, join mentorships, but I lost some money on some deals that I got myself into, not small sums of money, like, tens of thousands, 30,000 on one I lost. And again, like I didn't have like a boatload of cash just laying around, but it was like, hey man, I'm taking my lumps, and it took me a while to recover from all of that. But, that's what's ultimately got me here. So it's just like, you're not going to win every deal. Like you're not going to win. You just got to put yourself out there. You got to put yourself in the way of opportunity. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and you're going to learn along the way. And then, you learn enough doing deals, you start figuring it out. Once you've done a handful of deals, like you realize that it's really not that difficult. The hardest part is finding the deal. The easy part becomes, hey, what are we going to do with this? What's the strategy? How do we execute? And that part's really quite simple. I mean, there's always
you say that.
There's always problems along the way that need to be solved, but like there's only so many ways you can really. So it's like, okay, here's a problem. Here's a good solution. Something's going to happen along the way between the solution and the closing, but you just learn that there's usually a way to figure it out. And if not, you make sure you're protected. And,
that's an interesting thing. I think that's where a lot of folks, especially if you have a real estate background, you start wondering about the contracts and, oh my gosh, is this and is this? And then when you talk about protections, do you mean in that sense, or is it in another way as well, as far as?
Yeah, I mean, from a technical contract standpoint, you don't want to put yourself into situations. I mean, there's always going to be situations where, you take a risk and maybe you're going to lose a couple grand or something, but, you want to protect yourself. You want to have outs in these contracts. And really for me, yes, I want to have those things, but if I'm just transparent from the get-go with people that I'm working with about how I'm trying to help them and how this situation, may solve their problem, and hey, there's a risk that this could happen, if I'm upfront with them about, things that may potentially happen along the way, then it's not like a shock to them. And like most of the time they're willing to work with me to figure it out. If that means that they have to take a little bit less money, that conversation is not as difficult, because I've already said, hey, here's my solution. There's a chance this might happen. Let's hope it doesn't. But if it does, we're going to have another conversation here about it. That could be liens, that could be inspection items, that could be something that happens with the potential buyer. And so I'm always transparent about, my exit strategy with them. Hey, I'm wholesaling this thing. I just want you to know, here's how I do this. We're going to agree on this price, and then I'm going to go out. I might close on it. I might, fix it and flip it myself. I do that. Here's the price that I need to be at for that. I might do that, but I might also bring in a financial partner. I might bring in another investor in my network to ultimately close on it. So that's going to require me bringing a few more people through the house. And I'm just telling them all this straight up front. So there's no surprises when I say, hey, I need 2 hours on the weekend to open, have some people into the house, or I have my in buyer lined up and they back out on me. Well, they already know I have an in buyer, and if they back out and Presumably they've put an EMD down. Like, that conversation is not as difficult. Hey, this guy that I had lined up to buy this place just backed down on me. We're gonna have to take a step back. I'm gonna have to get a few more people in here. It's just transparency. So
Yeah, transparency, communication.
so that's above itself.
Sure,
Like you're
sure.
just very crystal clear about what you're doing. You're going to prevent a lot of potential problems down the road. Even when there are problems, it's a lot easier to explain to somebody, hey, this happened. Remember when we were talking about it and I said, like, there's a chance XYZ thing could happen? Well, unfortunately, it's happened. So we need to either talk about price or we need to talk about, extending the timeline or whatever. So, and those things inevitably happen. They don't happen all the time, but they happen frequently.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess my brain goes towards all these other things, and you're just like, it's just about talking to people.
Mhm.
Just being upfront, communicating, setting expectations.
Yeah. Building trust. I mean, it's all about building trust.
And when it comes to that, I mean, you've imagine over the years you've developed quite a list of buyers and investor partners, and that way you can really honor that contract to the best of your ability, right? Which I think that's something you can't really counterfeit. You have to kind of go out there, do deals, meet people, network, all that. I mean, can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, like, what does your partnerships look like in that sense? And
Yeah. I mean, I always want to be working with buyers that I trust as well. There's trust on both sides. There's trust on the seller side, and then I need to be able to trust the people that I'm working with. So you build those relationships along the way. At the end of the day, real estate world in this market, it's a small world. Like, everybody, the big players, and there's always people that come and go, and there's buyers that you run into. But specifically with wholesaling, there's buyers that I prefer working with because I know they're going to perform. I know I'm not going to have any issues. I know there's not going to be any questions about, my contract or my assignment fee or whatever. If I present a good deal to somebody and, I'm making 50 grand on the deal, like they shouldn't care what I'm making. Like if I'm giving them a good deal, they should be happy. There's a lot of buyers out there that might think that, oh, like, this wholesaler's making, XYZ dollars, and they get upset about it, or they decide, that they don't want to buy the deal because of the assignment fee that they're paying, which just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So it becomes relational on that side where, you want to be able to trust those people. The people that I work with, like they should be excited that I'm making, a nice assignment fee. If they're getting a good deal out of it, what do they care? So, and then you want to be able to trust, again, that they can close the deal. They've got good financing or cash. So I'm much more willing in a situation where, I might have several offers on a property. Maybe I've got a couple higher offers, but I've got this good buyer that I know, hey, if I sign this thing to this person,
it's going to get done.
It's going to be a done deal versus, I was in a situation recently where I had a much higher offer and I decided to kind of give this guy a shot because it was a big chunk of money. And I was kind of kicking myself because I had a weird feeling about it from the beginning. I hadn't worked with this guy before, and his hard money lender wouldn't lend on the deal because of the size of my assignment fee. And it was a double close. So it really totally made no sense, but I kind of had the vibe from and I went against my better judgment and said, this is like a big chunk of money. Like, let's see what happens here. And the only real reason I did that is because I knew I had other good buyers behind him.
Right,
and I gave him a very short window to
right.
perform. And he didn't. And I just went back and said, forget it.
Did you give him a better hard money lender referral for the next time around?
Yeah, I actually, it was quite the opposite. I was like,
yeah.